Hey guys, this is chapter 4 grammar from Jenney's, and as I usually do, we're going to break it down into subtopics. So the major topic of this chapter is second declension. Remember, conjugation applies to verbs and declension applies to nouns and adjectives. So this is a different morphology, a different system of endings for a particular kind of noun. We already learned first declension nouns. And remember, dictionary form, if you look on page 21, dictionary form of a first declension noun is going to look like dea, dea, goddess there. It's going to have an A ending in the nominative singular form, and it's going to have an AE ending for the genitive singular. So that shows you its first declension. It's going to fit in that pattern of dea, 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 deam, etc. So second declension masculine subtype nouns are the ones that we're looking at here for the most part in this vocabulary list. So a good example is amicus, amici. The sound of the C changes a bit in ecclesiastical Latin pronunciation because they have soft C's, but their soft C's aren't S like ours, they're Ch like the Italians. So amicus, amici, masculine, friend. So when you're studying vocabulary, you need to know that genitive ending because you need to know that it's a second declension noun, and you need to know the system of endings that it uses. And then M for masculine. Remember, most first declension nouns are feminine, and subtype masculine. For second declension nouns, obviously, those are going to be masculine. So that's the first thing to know, is how to distinguish them when you see them listed in a dictionary. If it's got an I in the second position, right, an I ending, and it's got a US at the end of the first form, then you know it's second declension. That I is the clincher. The US tells you that it's a masculine, but so does the M, gender marker that will come afterwards. And if it's got an AE in the second position, an AE in the genitive, and an A at the end of the nominative form, then you know that it is first declension. So look at the paradigm charts on page 30 here. Okay. Let's take as the basic pattern amicus, amici, right? So you can see that the system of endings, if you look all the way over on the right, is us, e, o, e, orum, is, os, is. You got to cut off the stem when you're trying to add these endings on. Cut off the us from the end of the stem, and what's left is your stem. So the stem for amicus is amic, for anus is an. So for those types, and you can see from the paradigm there are some slightly different types. For those types, you just cut off the us and put on the I. And those are the endings. So the system of cases and numbers is exactly the same as with first declension, and the meanings are the same. So nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, and ablative mean subject of, to or for, direct object, by or with, whatever it is, whatever the word is that you're dealing with. Amicus, amici, amico, amicum, amico, amici, amicorum, amicis, amicos, amicis. You'll notice a few things about this. Okay, first of all, you'll notice that in the accusative, the ending is, just like in first declension, is M and S in the singular and plural, just like in first declension. But instead of am and as, it's and os. But that might help you to remember it, but to remember the accusative forms. Remember, the genitive singular form is already given to you in the dictionary form. So it says amicus, and then it says e. That means amicus and amici are the first two forms. So if you're doing a paradigm, you should never get those two wrong because they're handed to you on a silver platter, as it were. You'll notice that the ablative and dative plurals not only are the same as each other, that's always true of ablative and dative plurals, but you'll notice that they are the same endings as are used in first declension. So puellis, puellis, that's ablative and dative plurals there. Amicis, amicis, that's ablative and dative plurals there for second declension. You'll notice that in the genitive plural, in first declension, the ending is arum, and in second declension, it's orum. So you're just changing the vowel again, just like you're doing in the accusative, but basically, it's the same ending. You'll notice that just as in first declension, the genitive singular ending and the nominative plural ending are the same. Puelle is genitive singular, but it's also nominative plural. those endings are the same in second declension as well. So amici and amici again. So hopefully those will help you. Also, this isn't always the case with Latin nouns, but in second declension, the dative and ablative plurals are the same as all nouns are, but the dative and ablative singulars are also the same. So amico is the dative and amico is the ablative. So hopefully that will help you learn the basic pattern. And do take amicus, amici as your basic pattern, and regard these other nouns that we're going to look at that are in the paradigm on page 20 as variants. Okay, so what's the difference with filius filii? So if you take the us off of filius, remember I told you to take the us off of the nominative form, and that's your stem, then your stem is filii. And what they tell you is, for the genitive singular, just use one I. In other words, basically chop off the I itself from the stem and then put it back on as your ending. I think you don't have to do that. I think it makes it a lot easier if you treat this word like a normal word and just leave filii and double the I. So if you look at the nominative plural form, you'll see they show you filii. The stem is filii and the ending is e, so you have two i's at the end, filii. I would do that in the genitive singular as well and save yourself some trouble. But in dictionary form, if you want to put down filius filii, as they do on page 21, you can. You could also just put down filius hyphen I, just like you do with amici, and then write the genitive singular as filii. So that's what I would do. Let's look at the next two words, puer and ager. So these are significantly different, right? Instead of ending in us, they end in er. And you're adding the endings onto the whole word, right? You're not dropping anything off. So the nominative singular, if you see in dictionary form here, you look over on page 21, you say puer, pueri. It's that I at the end of the second form again that tells you that this is second declension. Okay. So, at any rate, what you're going to want to do is put those endings on, treat the whole word, puer, as your base or stem. Don't cut anything off, and then add the endings on if you see an er. So puer, pueri, puero, puerum. But the endings are all the same. Slightly different if you look at ager, agri. Okay, the difference there is that ager, you don't just add the E of the letter I onto the end. You don't say ageri, you drop the E off. So it's ager, agri rather than ager, ageri. How can you tell which one it is when it ends in ER? Well, you just look at the dictionary form. That's why we have dictionary forms, to tell us what the morphology, what the actual changes in the form of the word are going to be when we learn a paradigm. So if you look at puer, pueri, on page 21, you see the E is still in there in the genitive form, so you keep it in there all the way through. If you look at ager, agri, you see that in the genitive form, the E has dropped out. So it becomes ager, agri, and it's just go all the way through with the form of agri. And those are the only two ones in your list. But if you see more of them further on, those are the rules to follow. Okay, so that is the core of second declension masculine. You'll need to know this paradigm when you're tested on it, which will be coming up, or when you're quizzed on it, or when you're translating a sentence. You have to know how to use this paradigm. And you can do that by learning how to say it to yourself. Amicus, amici, amico, amicum, amico, amici, amicorum, amicis, amicos, amicis. Use that as a model word. Or you can just learn the endings, us, but sometimes it's er, right, and then nothing. The whole thing is the base. E, O, O. You can see those over on the side. E, orum, iso, cis. Okay? And just plug them on. So now, when we have talked about noun declensions, we've talked about all the cases and the basic meanings of all the cases. But the only ones we've used heretofore are the nominative for subject and for predicate nominative, and the accusative case for direct objects. And we've also a little bit used the ablative when it follows the preposition in. But we've talked about the genitive in the sense that we've memorized it as part of the paradigm. Genitive rule of thumb meaning is of, right? So puella, puelle means of the girl, or amici means of the friend. But now we're going to talk about how actually to use the genitive in sentences. And this of meaning generally is what's called genitive of possession, right? If you say this is the sword of John, then that means that the sword belongs to John. He possesses it. So it's called genitive of possession. So it's the thing that the of attaches to that goes into the genitive. And here's something that you'll want to be thinking about. Genitives have to attach to some other noun. And that can be any noun in the sentence. It can be the subject. It can be the direct object. It can be the object of a preposition. So the main thing you want to think about when you're thinking about a genitive, when you're translating from Latin especially, is what does the genitive attach itself to? So you can think of genitives a bit like a barnacle. A barnacle attaches itself to a ship. A genitive attaches itself to a noun. So that's the key question for you. What noun is the genitive attaching itself to? It's got to be with something, right? Like the book of John or the sword of John. That's attaching to the word John. And if you use John as a subject, right? You say the book of John is on the table. That's fine. You know, then the genitive is attaching to that nominative form, right? It's attaching to that noun. If you say, I see the book of John, then the genitive is attaching to the direct object, right? If you say, I am in the house of John, then it's attaching to house, which is the object of the preposition in, and it's going to be in the ablative case. So it can be attaching to nouns of any case. It's a barnacle. It rides on another noun, and that noun can take any position in the sentence. Okay. So another thing to remember about English is we have two different ways of signifying possession, right? We can say the sword of John, right? That means the sword belongs to John. And which one are we going to put in the genitive? John, right? The thing that comes after of. We can also say John's sword with an apostrophe, right? And it means the same thing. So there, we're still going to put John into the genitive case. All right, so we just changed the word order there. The book of John, the genitive comes second. John's book, the genitive comes first. So the thing after of, or the thing that has the S on the end of it, is going to be what's in the genitive. By the way, if you're translating from Latin into English, bear in mind that if you put an apostrophe before the S, it means it belongs to the boy, one boy. So if you say boys, B-O-Y apostrophe S, that means belonging to one boy. If you want to say belonging to more than one boy, so if you want to say the boys' swords, like they all have swords and they belong to the boys in general, it's B-O-Y-S, and then you put the apostrophe at the end. So since I need to know whether you know that something is singular or plural, if you're going to translate with a possessive and an S, you're going to have to put your apostrophe in the right place. Okay? So that's topic number 2, the genitive of possession and how that works. Obviously, you're going to put something in the genitive case, right? So if you want to say the farmer's field, as you see over here on the bottom of page 20, it says agricole ager. That means of the farmer, that's in the genitive, the field. So the field of the farmer or the farmer's field. Okay. Let's take a look at the bottom of 21. This is topic 3, and it's a small topic. Okay? It's a footnote at the bottom. So there are 2 words, first declension words, in this list that are weird. Okay? They are dea and philia. Dea means goddess, as opposed to God. Philia means daughter, as opposed to son. Remember, God is Deus Dei, and son is Filius Filii. Those are both in our vocabulary for this chapter. All right, so those are first declension, obviously, because they have AE at the end. And that means they should follow the first declension system. But they don't completely. If they followed the first declension system, when you got to your dative and ablative plurals, the dative and ablative plural of dea or philia would be filiis or deis. That would be exactly the same as the dative and ablative plural for deus and filius, for God and Son. Those would also be deis and filiis. And maybe as a way to keep those distinct and not to confuse son and daughter, God and goddess in the dative and ablative plural, they have a weird special dative and ablative plural which you'll need to know. So if you want to say by or with the goddesses, you would say not filiis, but filiabus. And the same, deabus would be goddesses. For daughters, it would be filiabus. And the same for the dative 2 or 4. So they have special dative and ablative forms. Instead of deis, it's deabus. Instead of filiis, it's filiabus. That's topic number 3, brief topic. Topic number 4 is down at the bottom of the page, helps and hints. And this has to do with syntax, with Latin word order. Okay, so remember, the general rule is that Latin word order is very loose. You can put the subject at the beginning and the verb at the end. That's standard. But you can also put the verb at the beginning or in the middle because the endings tell us what things are. But if you have a subject and a direct object next to each other and you put a genitive in between them, then it's hard to distinguish which ship the barnacle is riding on. All right, I'll show you what I mean. So look at the sentence here. So servus agricolae, this is in helps and hints on the bottom of 22. It's right after this, the first sentence. Servus agricolae equum laudat. Okay, so we know that the subject is servus because it ends in a us. It's nominative singular, so the servant. We know that the verb is laudat. So we know so far that's the servant praises. We know equus equi is a horse, second declension. So we're looking at an accusative singular there. That's the direct object. So far we've got the servant praises the horse. And we know agricolae is probably some kind of genitive because it doesn't work as a nominative plural. It doesn't work as a dative in this sentence. But we don't know what it goes with. So if we write it like this, we could say that it means the servant of the farmer praises the horse. Or we could stick the agricolae, could have that riding on, that barnacle riding on the ship of the equum, attaching to that one, and we could say that it means the servant praises the horse of the farmer. So we don't know whether it's either the horse of the farmer or the servant of the farmer. It could be either one, and sometimes that could be clear from context. But the general rule is don't, if you have a subject and a direct object together like that, don't put the genitive in the middle. If you want to say the servant of the farmer, then say agricolae servus. Put the agricolae before the servus. Then you know it's the servant of the farmer. If you want to say the horse of the farmer, then put the agricolae after the equum, right? So then agricolae servus equum laudat would mean the servant of the farmer praises the horse. And if I put the agricolae after the horse, servus equum agricolae laudat, then you should read it as the servant praises the horse of the farmer. That way. Okay, so don't put the genitive in between because we don't know what ship the barnacle is riding on. Put it before the subject or after the direct object. Or if the direct object comes first, just make sure you don't put it in between the two if there are two so that it gets confused. Okay, it's not absolutely wrong, but you don't want the word order to go that way so that it's confusing. Okay, great. That is the grammar of chapter 4. Thanks.